Just so grateful to have John Balow, WDE Division Director in Special Education, and Krystyne Ethridge representing parents, helping parents. It's so good to have you guys on. I know there's so much interest in special education, and I know they'll learn a lot from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kim. It's understandable. I think it's been a long day for everybody. I can't imagine, applaud the discipline and resilience of getting through a full day of, uh, of presentations. And my name's John Balow. I'm the SPED director for the state. And I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to introduce when I'm done. We're going to split this up into halves. Krystyne Ethridge, who is from Parents Helping Parents, and we thought we would tag team a little presentation, and there may be a little bit of redundancy. And I did catch a little bit of that last session, and Jason, if you want to circle back to some of those questions, if those folks are still on, I might be able to respond to those as well. And we're going to do, I'll start, and I think the questions may be different for Krystyne than they may be for me. And so I think if we go through a little bit of a time for answering questions, and then we'll hand it off to Krystyne. So thanks for joining today. I'm going to do a quick just overview, the SPED 101 kind of presentation. It may be elementary for some, it may be new for some. And certainly, if you have deeper questions, I can try and answer them when I'm finished. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that? Okay.
Looks
Okay.
good from our end.
All right. Thanks. Really, the foundation of special education comes from federal law, and that federal law is IDEA, the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. It's been around for in different variations for almost 50 years, and been constantly transforming the situation and on the ground level and in the schools. Wyoming Chapter 7, if you're not familiar with Wyoming Chapter 7, it's our version that aligns with IDEA. In there's really specific state rules that apply to the schools, timelines, procedures, regulations that are all aligned with IDEA. And I want to make a little note about that as well. Is Chapter 7, inside Chapter 7, there's a monitoring piece or general supervision piece for the Department of Education that outlines our responsibilities to ensure that the federal act is actually being implemented in the school. And so we have a general supervision model. We do travel to around the state. We're required to hit every district at least once every 6 years. And through that process, we may dig in deep into their file work, into their processes, their policies, to make sure that they're all in alignment. So the first step in the special education process is child find. And child find is a legal obligation that schools must proactively identify and locate and evaluate children that have a suspicion of a disability. Sometimes that comes at age 3, sometimes that comes at age 9. And anytime either a parent or the school has a suspicion that there may be an underlying disability in a student, then they're obligated to search for those kids, and we don't wait once we find those. Parents can initiate that process at any point in time. If they suspect their child has a disability, they can request an evaluation from the school district, and then once you sign that request, the clock starts ticking for a 60-day evaluation process. So there's a referral request, there's the evaluation and testing component of that. And I always talk about, in special education especially, that parents shouldn't be involved; they should be engaged. And there's a little bit of difference, and sometimes the IEP process can be overwhelming to parents. It's filled with acronyms and terminology and processes you may not be familiar with, but we really encourage parents to dig in and understand what's going on and ask questions and to really understand the needs of their child, the evaluations that are met, being done, what they mean, and how that informs the decisions going forward. There'll be an eligibility meeting after that. Not all kids that are evaluated do qualify for special education, but if they do meet eligibility requirements under the law, then they're entitled to an IEP or an um, uh, individual education plan. And that process itself, it does take quite a bit of time and involvement and feedback back and forth between the parent and the school. Hopefully that's a good time to communicate, get to know the folks on the IEP team. And really, I think that the thing that I want to let parents know that you're the driver of this process. You're an equal partner. Nothing happens without your permission. And then once that plan is developed and implemented, there's an annual review of progress. At least once a year, the IEP meeting has to take place. I think I went through the referral process. Again, you can request a written request that starts the timeline, and they have to provide prior written notice to that. And once that's, when they agree or refuse to evaluate, sometimes there's a little bit of a disagreement between the parent and the school district about whether there should be an evaluation. And I think there is times when the school district can say, yeah, the child's doing fine with all the data they have, and they can present that in a way that said we really don't want to put the child through that process. But they can't go forward with that process without your permission. So there's a little bit of a switch there, and you must provide consent. The 60-day calendar clock starts that evaluation window from the date you sign that consent. They have 60 days to complete all evaluations. It might be in a specific content area. It may be an overall child. They really want to see what are the, also in that is the social and behavioral strengths of the child. And is there an underlying disability that is inhibiting their access to learning the general curriculum? But your insight in that process is critical. And I think sometimes that's where it can be overwhelming. But ultimately, stop the team and ask questions and get clarification if you don't understand an abbreviation or an acronym or part of the process. Those teams are going to be very helpful in helping you feel comfortable that you understand what's going on and are equal partners in that decision-making process. The process itself, and again, this is a very high overview of the process. We look at present levels of performance, and from that, we determine the individual goals for your child. They must be measurable based on the child's baseline data. As part of your team, you'll help define what success looks like. And this is where I think it's important for parents to understand to look at what success is going to mean this year. And I think it's important to look down the road too, as to what this means when a student gets to junior high or into high school and they start attaining credits towards graduation. One of the accommodations and the supports necessary for them to be successful. What services are available? There may be speech, OT, PT. There may be a number of services that are needed to allow them to have access to the general curriculum. You may have heard the term LRE, or least restrictive environment, and that's where general education classroom setting comes first. Children with disabilities must be educated with their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. And that's a discussion and a decision within that team of, yeah, they can function just fine in a regular education classroom. They just may need some supports or they may be in an entirely different environment because they need such specially designed instruction for most of the day. What supplemental supports and services are going to be available, and removal to a separate class only occurs if the goals can't be met in the regular class or with extra help and support in that regular ed class. And LRE supports academic achievement also on the, and for the social and behavioral development as well within that school community. Where would they learn best? How can they have access to the general classroom and curriculum? And can we do that with supports versus pulling them out to provide that? There's a monitoring process. You should receive updates quarterly on progress towards their individual goals, and an annual review at least once every 12 months. Those progress reports looks a little different in every district, but they should be responding to you as a parent, how your child is making progress towards their goals. And if they're not making goals, that would be a good time to request a meeting, or not making progress. That would be a really good time to request a meeting to figure out how you can adjust the IEP so that they are making adequate progress. And again, once every 3 years, there's a reevaluation process. The team pauses to determine if new testing is needed and to confirm that continued eligibility. Procedural safeguards, I'll provide a link later in the presentation, but we probably, if you're a parent of a student with a disability, you receive procedural safeguards. That's your legal protections and explains your rights under IDEA. And it's a safety net throughout the entire process. It's provided at least annually upon initial referral and upon request. It can be a very cumbersome document filled with legal language, but I think if you ever have any questions about what those rights are, reach out to your school, your IEP team, and if you're not satisfied with a question, feel free to reach out to us as well to help with some of those questions. That guarantees your right to review all our child's educational records. Prior written notice, so that means that basically they're not going to make any changes, they're not going to do anything without providing you written and informed consent before that change is proposed in an IEP meeting. Sometimes there's IEP teams and parents don't see eye to eye. We really encourage them to try and work through and have a good, a healthy relationship with those IEP teams and teachers and administrators. Because when things get crossways and we really disagree and we dig our heels in, either the parent digs their heels in or the school digs their heels in, sometimes we end up in a dispute. And we also manage that in the Department of Education if there's a dispute. We do have some additional supports before we get to that point, but it does, I'll get to the state complaints and mediation due process. As a parent, you have rights to all those things, and they should be easily explainable and at your disposal. Just a note: if there is a formal dispute or a complaint filed with the Department of Education, we are a neutral, unbiased processor of that complaint. We don't pick sides with the parent. We don't pick sides with the district. And so through that process, there is always an opportunity to go through mediation, and we provide a mediator to begin with to see if we can resolve that particular problem from the start without getting into, no, we're not satisfied, we're going to continue with the process, in which then the WE has an independent investigator look into all the details around that particular complaint, and they will issue a findings or no findings, or did the district follow the law, or did the district, is there something we need to address in that process? So just to give you an idea, generally in a year, this year, I think we're at 28 or 29 formal complaints. It varies from year to year. We've had, as few as 10, and we've had some over 30. And so it depends really. Some are the same parents that do multiple complaints, and sometimes it's just a busy year. Disagreements are part of the process. You have formal tools to resolve them. Facilitated IEP, we do offer if the IEP team, if there's some gravel in the gears of that process, reach out to the WDE, and we have some people that can come in and facilitate that process for you, kind of a neutral person to help parents and help districts get together on what they can what they can agree upon in that IEP. And so that facilitated IEP can head off a lot of challenges that result in people disagreeing. You always have the right for, requesting an independent evaluation. If you disagree with the results in that process, you can get a second opinion from an outside the district expert, and that district is obligated to pay for those services as well. And so, and we get to mediation, and a third party assists the team in finding common ground. Here's just a look at the eligibility categories. There's 13 in the state: autism, developmental delay, emotional disability, cognitive disability, and multiple disabilities. Under the sensory and learning, there's specific learning disabilities, speech and language, hearing, visual impairments, and deaf and blindness. And with health, there may be some sort of other health impairment, such as ADHD, traumatic brain injury, or orthopedic impairments. To qualify, in Chapter 7, there's very clear rules for each one of those that if you have questions about and how those are used to determine whether a student qualifies or does not qualify. So this is just some advice to help parents in the IEP journey. One of the things is preparation, the organization of files. If you're a parent of a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that just enters in and there's identified disability, you're going to end up with pages and pages and pages of documents throughout that child's educational process. And so one of the things that I recommend is either electronic or a physical binder to start the process and the journey, and just put all the little notes, all the notifications, any communications that you have with the district or the teacher. And so that you can look over time back and forth, and you can see kind of this longitudinal picture of the progress that was made and some of the things that maybe worked. It can be kind of frustrating at times because as your child progresses through the system, you have a new teacher potentially, possibly a new school, and the coordination and connective tissue between the school years and between schools. Maybe you move. That would all be helpful information to have and be able to share with a new IEP team. Engage in the process, clarify, stop. If you don't understand something, please stop and ask to be, someone to explain what that means, or what that process is, or what that particular term means. And look at those goals that are developed and make sure that you're okay with them, and they align with what you want to see happen as a parent as well as the school. Take notes at the meeting so that you can remember, because trust me, it actually, having my own child with a disability and a grandchild with a disability, I know that even someone with my experience has difficulty keeping track of everything that was said and everything that was going to be done. And I think it kind of helps with the process. And once the process is over of the IEP, you'll get a copy of that, and just make sure that it matches what you thought was decided during that particular meeting. And if there is a disagreement or something that was missed or something you misinterpreted along the way, don't be afraid to reach out and respond to the district that I don't see this, then we talked about this, I don't see this particular piece of the IEP. And then be sure that you're paying attention to those progress reports throughout the year, and see if your child is making progress. Just a couple of helpful tips. Just again, create and organize a binder, request drafts 3 to 5 days early so you have a chance to look at that information before you get to the meeting. And don't be afraid to say what your long-term vision for your child. Sometimes IEP teams get stuck in what's right before us, and it's not an assembly line. You're going to be with that student or your child the rest of their educational career, and I think it's important to think down the road at what some of the decisions you make now are going to mean as well. Describe your vision, list your specific concerns. You know your child better than anybody. Draft some things that you think might be helpful for that child in the classroom, accommodations, and then just be sure and respond. The meeting time should be set at a flexible time. Many of you work or have other obligations and other kids at home. The meeting should be scheduled at a time that is flexible and accommodates your schedule as well as theirs. Again, check your notes on the meeting, sign and return the consent to move forward, and slip the copy of that signed copy in your binder, and then send a thank you. It's always nice there's good people in the districts. They're working hard for your children. You know that, and sometimes it's nice to say thank you. They do care about your student or your child, and it's important to also appreciate the work that they do. Track your progress reports, keep a communication log, check in with your child, ask them, how's it going? Are you, how does their day look? Or what, just be inquisitive about what they're experiencing as well. And if everything is not going as you planned or as you see that's being beneficial, you can always request, an additional IEP meeting. Say, hey, look, something's not working right. Let's reconvene and develop a new plan or adjust the old plan. How am I doing on time? 4:22. So there's a legal foundations, kind of the roadmap, and really this idea of being a partner with the school. Good communication. There's no substitute for good communication, and being appropriately expressing your desires and your views, and again, you're a equal partner in this process as well. I did put in some additional resources. Our Chapter 7 rules, the federal law. I did put in the Parent Information Center, and a link to our special ed division site in general. So that was pretty quick overview. I would like to break now for a little bit and see if there's any questions. I cannot see with my split screen. I'm afraid I'll lose you so someone's going to have to read me the chats.
Director Balow, would you be willing to let Krystyne speak and then we can have questions at the end? Or if there are
sure.
time constraints, then we can do yours now. That would be wonderful too.
I'm flexible. Krystyne, you want to take over and then we can wait till the end. That's fine.
I'm also flexible, whatever is easiest for everyone. If it is
Go
easier to
Krystyne. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and we'll shoot you both some questions. Thank you so much.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay, do we see this as a full screen? Does that look all right for everybody? Perfect, I see a thumbs up. Wonderful, okay. Well, hello, I am Krystyne Ethridge. I am the Executive Director of Parents Helping Parents of Wyoming. And I am absolutely thrilled to be here today to talk with you guys a little bit more, extending on Mr. Balow's presentation, taking what he just presented and now asking the question, well, what now? As a parent, we learn a lot of information. We get that information. But here, through my presentation, we will take that to the next level on how we can then apply it as parents and do some advocacy work appropriately in that parental role. So a little bit about what you will learn today. First, I'll talk a little bit about how Parents Helping Parents can help you, who we are, what we do. And then we'll dive into how parents can become that active participant in their special education journey. So first, who is Parents Helping Parents of Wyoming? We are the only designated federally funded parent training and information center. You will hear us referred to as the Parent Information Center, which is a project of Parents Helping Parents of Wyoming. I like to joke it's bad branding, but that's who we are. So we are both the Parent Information Center and Parents Helping Parents of Wyoming. Our role is to serve families of children with disabilities from birth up to age 26, and we are just about to celebrate our 35th year as being the Parent Training and Information Center for Wyoming. Like I said, am the executive director and I am in Cheyenne. However, we do not have a brick and mortar office at this time. So even though I'm in Cheyenne, that doesn't mean too terribly much unless you'd like me to present locally. That's wonderful. We do have staff throughout the entire state, as far as Rock Springs and as north as Gillette. So we do cover quite a bit of ground with our 6 staff members, including myself. Now, we like to clarify that we think of our role as parent educators. My staff have the official title of an outreach parent liaison, and that also helps to paint the picture that we are here to be a liaison between the school district and the parent as a bridge to help parents learn how to advocate for their children appropriately. And then a little caveat that we support, not replace your school relationship. We want to help build that up. And our services are free for families at no cost. We also do help school staff and provide school professional development. Next, here we go. So we like to just really emphasize the fact that you are not alone as a parent in this journey. I know John talked about a lot of the wonderful resources at the state level and within your district support. But we are also that option too, as a little bit more of a local, confidential, like, hey, I've got a quick question, and we can help you walk through that as well if you're feeling not quite ready to go to the school district or higher. We provide that one-on-one family assistance. We provide that by phone, video call, or in person if we're local. We help you prepare for meetings. We help you understand the documents the school district may send you and knowing your options and next steps, just depending on whatever is going on with you when you call. We love when parents or professionals reach out and ask us to come to their area, and then we will bend over backwards to come to you. We do provide IEP meeting support. I did just get an alert that my internet's unstable, so hopefully we are okay. Wonderful, thank you. So we provide IEP meeting support within our grant with the Office of Special Education Programs. We are required to provide a minimum of 40 IEP meetings, or to attend a minimum. However, last school year we attended nearly 200. So we very regularly attend much more than the minimum that we have obligated ourselves to. We do like to make a note here as well that we do not attend IEP meetings as advocates. We think of ourselves as a step below an advocate. We are here to, again, make sure you're understanding what the school may be telling you, making sure the school understands what you are trying to tell them. We help you prepare and feel strong enough to speak up in those meetings. However, we don't speak on behalf of families in that advocacy role. Our job is to help you be that person for your child. And then we also have a resource library on our website, wpic.org, that has wonderful training sheets, different webinars and trainings, podcasts, and all of our up upcoming events are listed there as well. At the bottom, you'll see our PHP tip here that says you don't need to be in a crisis to call us. Actually, when you call us, it will tell you we are not a crisis center. We love that proactive call. Hey, I think my child may have a disability. Hey, my child just got an IEP. What do I do now? And we can help you know those next steps. Here's just a little snapshot of some of the just a very few of the things that we do and offer families, but we have supported over 1,800 families in this last year. We have over 3,800 email subscribers, and like I mentioned before, we've attended over 40 IEP meetings in a year. So here's where we will jump into kind of going piece by piece from Mr. Balow's presentation and then adding in some best practices and tips for parents. So looking at that IDEA versus Wyoming Chapter 7, right? I know we talked about how IDEA is that Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that guarantees FAPE, which is your free appropriate public education. Now, we know this, right? We can look up different IDEA statutes and understand what it may say. The best practice that we would tell parents is that before any meeting, write down your child's strengths, their challenges, and what you want for their future. That is a critical component of the IEP, and it does matter what you say and what you see, what reports you might have medically to be considered. Those things are wonderful additions to that conversation. Within Wyoming Chapter 7 rules, like Mr. Balow said, those are our state-specific rules that align with IDEA. And always ask for a copy if you would like to know. They'll list out different timelines and things that you need to know in order to hold the district accountable. And again, just to really make sure it's emphasized through both of our presentations, you are not a guest at that table. You are a part of that table. You are a required member of that team. Make sure if a meeting is scheduled without your meaningful participation, that you know that could potentially be seen as a procedural violation. You will know when you call me. I will not tell you that is or is not a procedural violation. That is not my job to tell you. But just know you should have meaningful participation. And if you don't, that is a concern. Check my time. Doing good. All right. Looking at that child find and talking about some best practices there. So we look at where school districts must seek out those children that may have that disability. A pro tip here is if your child attends a private school or a homeschool, just know in the state of Wyoming that child find does still apply here. So contact your local school district directly to get that support and services in place if they haven't already done so in that setting. Parents, you also can initiate. Many times parents will call me because they want to and they're not sure how. We have templates families can use that respectfully ask for that full comprehensive evaluation, and we can share that with you and help you know who to email and when. The phrasing here, I am making a formal written referral for a special education evaluation, something great to consider. Making sure that your request is formal and specific so that there's no potential misunderstanding of what you were asking. Before any evaluation, services or IEP, that's where we have this child find that we've been talking about. And just remember that this is a legal obligation that schools need to proactively seek out those kiddos. Another tip we regularly will tell parents is to make sure when you are requesting this evaluation that you are doing so by email or in writing. Ideally, that email will have a timestamp so that way you can, reference back to that as needed, and you can follow up if you haven't gotten a response within 10 school days, which is what we kind of think of as that golden number of giving them leeway to respond. Now, looking at that roadmap, like Mr. Balow had laid out for us earlier, we start with that referral and that request. Again, this is that written request, ideally, using the formal language that is dated. A best practice here is to make sure you're emailing that request to your school's administrator and child's teacher, and you're saving that sent receipt. After you've gotten that request sent, If the team agrees to evaluate, you will be able to provide your parent input and request those reports before the eligibility meeting. A note here that they cannot begin this evaluation until you have signed for consent, like Mr. Balow mentioned earlier. So it is important, if you feel the school is pushing off that consent to sign, to ask why, and make sure you're signing and you're using the date that you signed and sent back to them, not the date maybe you had a conversation about it, because those dates tend to be different. In the meantime, while they are evaluating, make sure you're writing down some observations that you see at home, and ideally you'll submit those before the meeting as well, so the whole team can have those ahead of time. During the eligibility meeting, that is when the team will consider the different 13 eligibility categories and which one your kiddo could potentially fall under, if any. And it is important to request those evaluation reports, I would say a minimum of 3 days before the meeting. It is really helpful to have those evaluation reports beforehand to review, and that is something my team can also help you with. If you get those ahead of time, we can look through those with you so you fully understand that language prior to even going into an eligibility. Let's say you go to your eligibility meeting and the team does deem your kiddo eligible under one of the 13 categories. That is when that IEP will be developed. Come prepared to this. Make sure you're asking about goals and services and that least restrictive environment. You are, again, a valuable member of this team, and you should make sure you understand every component as you're going through. Talk with your team, your IEP team, if you don't understand. If you get in there and they say something you don't know, it's okay to ask. Make sure you bring your priorities in writing, and you take the IEP draft home and you're reviewing as well, so you're fully informed when you're making decisions alongside the team. Then we'll have those annual reviews where we're comparing data, looking at our growth on our goals, and then if you're not making progress on your goals, to request those meetings sooner than at that 1-year mark. Keeping a communication log is a best practice, and request actual numbers, that raw data in writing, to see where your kiddo is progressing along those trend lines. All right, moving into a little bit more of what you can do here within that referral, right? When we're writing that request, here's just another little touch on I'm requesting a formal special education evaluation. Using that language is very important. Sending it to the right person and saving proof that it was received will help you in the long run. That prior written notice, or PWN, must be given to you before any of those changes can be implemented. And so make sure you're reading that prior written notice carefully. If the school is refusing to evaluate at this point, right, you've requested an evaluation and they are and the school is refusing, they must explain why in that prior written notice, and you do have a right to challenge that refusal. That is something that we do get calls about occasionally, and that is something we can help you know your rights when navigating. Making sure you ask for clarification on any part you don't understand before you respond. 9 times out of 10, if we have a parent call us and they feel they're in crisis and that something is going wrong, it's just a communication error. And we can help you figure out what was said, proper language to ask for clarification from the school. Most of the time, it was just a communication error, one way or the other. And, most people mean well, right? Our teachers, our admin, our staff, we always joke they're not in it for the money and fame. They're not in education. They're in it because they love kids. And we need to go in with that mindset that sometimes there are really just communication errors that we can help with. Making sure you have your informed consent before that testing begins. Make sure to ask those questions if you don't know. What areas will be tested? Who will conduct each assessment? You have the right to know this before you sign consent. Make sure you're reviewing the evaluation plan first so you know exactly what you're approving, what you're saying yes to. That pro tip on the 60-day clock, that's what starts when you sign consent. Make sure you know what you're agreeing to, but don't delay unnecessarily either. That time does matter for your kiddo. All right, within our evaluation clock, it is that 60 days after consent is signed. After that 60 days, or within that 60 days, you have an eligibility meeting to determine that eligibility. If you are determined to be eligible, you have 30 additional calendar days to have that IEP written and put into place. A little note on our 13 categories. Feel free to research those. WDE has them listed on their website where you can look through each of the qualifying checklists. We also have them on our website. Look through them, see what you think your kiddo may qualify under. What is the team evaluating for? Know the options and resources that you have for you. Make sure you understand any conclusion that the team comes up with. And again, 100%, your voice counts. It matters what you see at home. It matters what you see in transitions and appointments and in the community. Feel free to submit that parent input statement before that evaluation meeting. Sometimes parents will do this when they're requesting evaluation. I see they request it, and here's why. It really paints that full picture of your kiddo. And you do have that right to receive a copy of those evaluation reports before the eligibility meeting. Request them in advance so that you can review and prepare your questions. All right, so now we move into developing that plan. We talked about those goals. What's something that you can do? You can ask, how are we going to measure this goal? How often am I going to see data? If a goal can't be measured, it can't be tracked, and that won't drive real progress. Accommodations, what's going to help your kiddo access their curriculum and their academics and their day-to-day life at school? Ask for a list of every accommodation and confirm it will be communicated to all of your child's teachers, not just the special ed teacher. And as far as services are concerned, ask where will these services be delivered and will my child miss general education time? Those things matter when we're talking about least restrictive environment. We do want to make sure that parents know because sometimes they do call and they don't want to sign the IEP because they may not agree to something. Something we explain a lot is signing that IEP is saying that you were in attendance at the IEP meeting. It's okay to sign it if you were there. Make sure it's noted in the prior written notice if you have any disagreements or concerns regarding the meeting decisions. Okay, when we're talking about least restrictive environment, that doesn't mean it's always general ed, right? Your least restrictive environment is not always going to be general education. Yes, the goal is to educate your child to the maximum extent possible with their non-disabled peers, but there's that caveat, the maximum extent possible, right? We want to look at where your kiddo's at and where they are successful. This is just a general kind of chart here to show you examples of what could be deemed least restrictive versus most. Going through this continuum for general education, which would be considered our least restrictive. Ask what specific supports will be provided in the classroom and who's responsible for delivering them, which type of staff role, right? We're not going to see specific staff names in the IEP as, this particular teacher is the only one that can do this. You're not going to see that, but you'll see general education teacher, special education teacher, who's providing that service. We're going to go down the continuum to just a little bit more restrictive in that resource room. We're pulling out of gen ed and bringing our kids to a more self-contained environment for specific minutes, specially designed instruction. The amount and frequency and duration of time in the resource room or that pull-out space would be dependent on the child and the conversations of the IEP team. A self-contained class would be a little bit more restrictive. That's where most of our day is spent in a self-contained special education classroom and then going out into general education for time periods deemed appropriate by the IEP team. Going more specific or more restrictive, we go to a separate school. Are we going to a behavior school, a BOCES, those types of schools? And ask the team to document in writing why a less restrictive setting cannot meet your child's needs. And you'll find that in the prior written notice. And then we get even more restrictive with a homebound or a hospital residential type placement and ask how the school will maintain your child's connection to peers and plan for their return to a least restrictive setting. And if you're curious, ask your team where your kiddo falls on this continuum. Like I said, this is just an example. This is not a cut and dry. There are a lot of creative ways in between all of these different bullet points on here, but this just gives you a general idea of what that may look like. So when we're monitoring our progress, we have those progress reports. When you receive a progress report, compare it to that baseline data listed in your IEP. If it says making progress, but there's no data, call the school, ask for the actual numbers, find the raw data and ask what they're seeing. And if we go to our annual review once a year, you don't have to wait for the school to schedule it. They will because they're required to, so they will. But if you're getting close and you're getting nervous that maybe it's not getting scheduled, just reach out. About 2 months before the anniversary date, you can reach out and say, hey, I'd really like to confirm this is being planned. Here's what my availability looks like. And kind of get that ball rolling if that makes you feel a little bit better navigating those annual reviews. And then every 3 years, you can request a reevaluation, but it is standard that would happen. But you can do that sooner if there have been significant changes. Wow, it's getting late in the day. Significant changes in your kiddo, and making sure to put that in writing as well. And again, you can request an IEP meeting at any time. It does not have to be at an annual review or at a reevaluation. If something's not working, don't wait. Submit that formal request for a meeting and keep your copy. All right. Within prior written notice, we need to make sure every time the school proposes or refuses a change, ask for it in writing. They should by default be already sending this to you, but if you don't see a copy, just ask for it. They won't put it in writing. That is a red flag.
Krystyne, I don't want to interrupt.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
All this information is so valuable. We only have about 12 minutes left and we would love to move into questions, but I do want to give you plenty of time to finish up as well. Is there something that maybe you would want to say in wrapping up, and we can definitely share your PowerPoint, the remainder of it?
I'm keeping track of time and I should be done in just a moment.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Oh, thank you so much. Sorry
Yeah,
for interrupting.
absolutely. No, you are totally fine. When we go into review of records, you can request the educational records at any time. Again, with that informed consent, making sure you understand before you sign. And then before you decide to file a formal complaint for whatever reason, we highly recommend that you call us. A lot of times this can help avoid escalating unnecessarily and bringing things to a higher level that may not need to go to that higher level. Many times when parents call us, we can help resolve a conflict at a local level without needing to escalate. We do like to note that we're on page 2 of the procedural safeguards listed as the Parent Information Center. When you don't agree, here's kind of a general idea of the path you can go. Start with talking with your school. If it doesn't work, you can come to us and we can help. You can ask for a facilitated IEP meeting, an independent educational evaluation, and then moving along this to more and more higher level dispute options. Throughout everything, keep your documentation with dates. That way, if it does turn into an escalated dispute, you have that documentation. But always try that least formal option first. Right, this is just going back to that 13 eligibility categories and making sure you understand the different options that are there to be considered, and knowing that a medical diagnosis does not necessarily guarantee eligibility for an IEP. At the end of the day, you are your child's most powerful advocate. You don't have to have all the answers. We don't have all the answers, but we will work together to find those answers for you. All you have to do is show up and we'll help you with the rest. Here are some things upcoming for PHP and different ways to reach out to us. And 10 minutes for questions. Is that good?
All right, we got our first question here. Is it legally appropriate for a district to use least restrictive environment as a reason to avoid providing one-to-one support, rather than considering the support as a supplementary aid intended to help the student remain successfully included in the general education environment?
I can weigh in on that. And looking back, it looked like there was another question about LRE. And I think it's very important. There's one word in there that, at least to the maximum extent, appropriate. And sometimes that is the disagreement, that what is appropriate for my child, and I think the challenge of that is that, again, you're equal partners in that IEP process. If a school feels very strongly, I'd ask, what data do you have to show that you could provide support, or data that you have that indicates that this is a good or a bad decision. Um, we've been accused of being a little wishy-washy at times in special ed, but the common answer sometimes is it depends. It depends on what that IEP team has decided, and then carrying out those decisions. And the power of this whole process lies fundamentally with that IEP team. And then when we're in disagreement with them, that's where I think Krystyne mentioned some of the steps towards the, uh, either coming together on a decision. We always encourage that, we heard from Converse too, and talk about the chain of command and going through the teachers and the principals and the special ed director and trying to get to a common ground. But if that can't take place or doesn't happen, then there are the more formal processes that are in place to protect parents' rights. And so it really depends on the decision of that IEP team. Once that IEP team makes a decision, and the parent disagrees, that's where the next steps come into play. So, yeah, LRE sometimes is where my child's going to be educated does come into a conflict, but it's where the team feels that the maximum extent appropriate for them to move forward. So hopefully it answers that question.
I'd like to add too, if that's all right. I think that, what Dr. or Mr. Balow was saying, it is tricky talking about least restrictive environment. If we look at that chart that I had up, that's an example of that LRE continuum. Like I mentioned, you can get creative. So having a one-on-one support could be a conversation, but is that particular child's least restrictive environment, and that needs to be based on the data that is provided by the IEP team. We need to make sure all of our decision-making processes are done through data-informed decision-making.
Next question. What are our options for an advocate in the state of Wyoming?
I'll let Krystyne answer that one.
Sure. So they are very few and far between in the state of Wyoming. A lot of times parents come to us asking for us to be advocates. I let them know we are not advocates, but we can do these certain things. And that 9 times out of 10 solves the problem. If they do need to escalate beyond that, there is COPA, which is a website where advocates can go on and register. I would recommend you do your research when you go through those websites when it comes to credentials and best practices. And then going through the procedural safeguards within your different free and low-cost legal services and legal aids that are listed there. And that's provided the procedural safeguards from WDE. But we have found it very difficult to find advocates local to Wyoming.
All right, next question. What happens when a parent disagrees with the least restrictive environment placement in an IEP meeting? Can the school go ahead with that placement? And what options does the parent have to dispute this?
I think we kind of answered that in the previous question. But if the school has gone through the process and the team process and the evaluation, and they nobody ever wants to force anything in an IEP process. And if the parent disagrees with the decision that was made in that IEP process, I think we've gone through the steps to challenge those decisions, previously.
There are no further questions in the queue, but we'll give people, actually, we just got one pop in. How does the state ensure schools have the appropriate support and resources in place to ensure they can follow through with evaluation and IEP decisions? For example, are teachers provided extra support in the classroom if they have several students who need additional support to get the teachers and the kids what they need?
The answer is that, and it ties back to a previous question about funding, is that we're very fortunate in the state of Wyoming to have a cost-based model. And it basically reimburses the district for special education expenses dollar for dollar. And so the answer is it may cost the district some funds the first year, but they're reimbursed for that particular funds the next year. So that IEP teams in Wyoming do have the flexibility to not consider decisions for what's best for a student based on what it's going to cost. That is one of the beauties of our state, and we're very fortunate to have that. But there never should be a decision made in an IEP team based on cost and what we don't have the money. That's not an acceptable reason under the law.
All right, there are no further questions in the queue, but we'll just give another moment for anybody to ask.
Y'all are a bunch of troopers out there hanging on till 5 o'clock on a full day. So if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to me directly or to some of our staff at the department. So many issues can be headed off if we can just get people to talk together and work together.
I can't thank you both enough, Director Balow and Mrs. Ethridge. You guys are amazing. And the information that you shared today will help so many. We appreciate your insights, your input, and all of your expertise. To the group, I thank you as an audience and participants for being here today and throughout the day, different sessions. In closing, just again, a big thank you for being a part of a statewide network of parents who care deeply about the future of Wyoming. While we are spread across many miles, our goals for the children are identical. The WDE is committed to keeping this digital door open. This summit is not a one-time event. It's the beginning of a new era of transportation and communication. Please look out for our YouTube video posts, which will include recordings of each session. Go forth with the confidence, knowing that the Wyoming Department of Education is in your journey and in your corner. Thank you again. Everybody have a wonderful rest of your day.